Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Hello, hi, all people that's in chat. It's been a while. Yeah, okay, I don't see that, so I don't know where you're getting that from. But yeah, hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to really, I guess it's not that early, but a pretty early stream today. Let me get me a second. Get this put away. Okay, cool. There we go. But yeah. But your video, yes, I know, it's super exciting. It's super bright and early, and actually, for some reason, my slides are not working today, so I'm looking for a fix actually right now. Normally, just uploads fine, but it's not, which is why we're at a tad delay, but that's perfectly fine. So before we get all that started, let's make sure everyone here is checked in, so you all get your credit for coming to this Global Hack Week. Thank you, appreciate it. Yeah, so if you have not yet, here's a check-in link for you to check in. And yeah, I haven't been on here for a while since I took last Global Hack Week off. But really, it's more so I didn't take it off, but I wasn't in the country to do it. My initial goal was to always do a Global Hack Week, every Global Hack Week, but it kind of fell through because I wasn't in the country for the last one, like 14 months, so like a year and like 3 months of every Global Hack Week I did a stream. So I cut myself some slack on that one. But let's see. Let's get some questions from chat. Hello, MLH community members and audience attendees. How are you today? What is the session plan? The session plan is we're doing a basic of Python. I'm pretty sure you've been here, Tintin, before. It's our really basic standard Python stack. So we're not stack, but workshop. We're gonna really go over some basics of computer science, and the data types and variables in Python, and then we're gonna do some fun little utilize them in Replit type of deal. But yeah, it's been the most common thing. I know, right? 404 Tintin's messages are generally always written so well. But it seems like I'm getting a bit of lag today. Let me know if I'm lagging in chat. I know it's really formal. 100%. Give me 1 second as I try to see if I can get an alternative solution to the slides up. I'm surprised. This is so bright and early, and there's so many people. Okay, cool. Yeah, I think I'm trying to run too many things at once, so my computer's not super happy with me. But like that's a whole different problem. Let's see. Okay, we're gonna do something super crazy. Is we're actually gonna run this Global Hack Week Python stream without slides, because getting the slides up seems to be a lot. Then it's gonna be worth. And so I'm actually just gonna go ahead. Whoa, everything is super glitchy. That is fair. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna share this real quick so we have a visual that is just not me, and hopefully that helps a bit. But yeah, it's odd time. What's funny is I actually just got an internet upgrade, air quotes on the upgrade. So I will probably have to call back in and go, what the heck is going on? Supposedly, let's see if we can. So Okay. Hello. Can you hear me? That's crazy. I got zapped out of existence of the known universe for a second right there. But yeah, so we're gonna do something pretty unique, which is we're gonna actually run without. I've been pretty structuring my workshops recently, so okay, real quick. I got zapped out of existence, so I'm back in existence now. But we're gonna do something pretty unique today, which is we're going to run our Python workshop without the actual slides. Yeah, I know, it's okay. We're back. But yeah, anyone's completely challenged of creating a website with a GoDaddy domain. I need help. I got a domain, but I don't know how to create a website. This is great for using the actual Discord and working with everyone on this. So that's wonderful to hear. That you are having problems, because that's the whole point of this community, right? To help each other out. But yeah, so let's get started. I'm gonna do everything that's just gonna be verbal, which is super weird. But this is what you get for taking a month off, I guess. But hi, I'm Kev. Sorry for the tad delay in start. So I generally say feel free to talk to me about anything. And yeah, so supposedly, if I was telling a story earlier, which was I supposedly got an internet upgrade. I feel like it's a downgrade. But I'm gonna be calling my internet provider soon, probably after the stream, and going, what the heck is going on? Because I should be getting better speed and not worse speed. But yeah, so with that being said, let's get kicking. So what's it on the agenda is that we're going to set up, as I buffer through some of this stuff, we're going to look at what is in Python. So what you can do, what data types are there, and all the basics of Python. We're going to look at the types of program language Python is, and then do some basic coding in some Python. But what we're going to be utilizing is what we call Replit. Replit is a wonderful resource. Essentially allows you to create a sandbox playground for any type of code stack you're generally working with. So I can create one. And if I can get everything functional, that would be greatly. Okay. Yeah, is it here? Give me 1 second. Let me see if I can fix this. Close that. Do. The midst of technical difficulties today. Yeah, I'm never taking a break again. No, it's moving slow. It's not your internet. It's definitely me. We're trying to resolve that right this second. Um, hopefully I have resolved the issue. I think I was stressing everyone too much, but let me know if I'm still lagging, and hopefully you guys can hear me. So as I was saying, we're gonna run this global hack week, really non-traditional style, which is everything just come right out of the top of my head. So we're gonna hopefully not miss anything, and we're gonna get started. If I'm lagging anymore, please do let me know. And with that being said, I think I can operate the stream now, hopefully fine. Make sure to check in. Yes. Okay, cool. Amazing. Wonderful. This is going to be the funnest speed run I have ever done. No lags. Okay, great. Wonderful. Okay. We're going to do some back-end repairs after the stream. But earlier what I was saying was just I supposedly got an internet upgrade. I'm feeling like it's been an internet downgrade now. So I got to call my ISP, my internet service provider later, and go, what the fudge is going on? Enjoy some background music now that it's fully functional. I've cut down on everything. Also, yes, super cute dinosaurs. Look at that. Look at that on stream. Okay, cool. Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you for saying it's working fine. Everything is working. Wonderful. Wonderful. Okay, cool. With that being said, let's get going. So first thing, if you haven't, create your own replit, and then we're going to go create a replit. Or repel, I guess. They don't call it, it's not, I mean, it's on replit, but it's a repel. We're going to create a Python repel. We're going to name our Python repel anything you like. So I'm going to name it Global Hack Week, Web3. The month is what? What month are we in? September. I'm going to do Python. Intro to Python. And then we're going to put the September in brackets and do a dash. Okay, there we go. So I'm going to create a quick repel. So we have some space to work in, especially because today's going to be lecture styled. So that's a shock for me, as it's probably a shock for you, because was not prepared for lecture style. So it's going to go ahead, essentially what I was explaining earlier is what a repel is. A repel or replit essentially generates a sandbox space for you to work with any tech stack you want. They have anything from C, C++, Java, and everything in between. So you essentially, it's a really good way to get started in a programming language before you really actually install everything locally and you have to run everything yourself. So I hope everyone has checked in. If you have missed it here, oh, that's the repel link. But here is the check-in link. So it's https://. Well, actually, those are forward slash. No, those are backslashes. / events.mlh.io /events/10109. I guess we start using codes for that. And then again, the link to where we're at right now is called replit.com. I think you can also do repel.it. It was their old domain before they grabbed like a .com domain when they were a bit smaller. But yeah, so with that, we're going to switch over to our Ask Me Anything banner. If this works. Oh, no lag, please. Okay, ask me anything in chat. Yes, exactly. 4.4 has a decent explanation here as well. Infrastructure, especially nowadays. But yeah, we're gonna really just use. So what you can see is we have something called a Python file with .py. .py is the extension for Python. And since we're doing this in such an odd way, I'm going to zoom in, and then I'm going to actually hide the menu side, so it's a fun game. So I'm going to first drag our console to the bottom, and I'm going to drag it down a tad bit so we have a bit more space to read, right? Okay, so first things first, we're going to talk about is commenting, because I'm going to need to use that for this workshop, as that's how I'm going to be teaching things. So if you do 3 quotes where you get, actually, oops, no, that's it. Is it two? Hold on, I can't remember anymore. Let's see. I think it's 3 quotes. If I am not wrong, I am not wrong. Okay, cool. Because sometimes it generates a shift. So if you do 3 quotes, you do something called block comment. Block comment. So you would just use 3 quotes. It's created with 3 quotes. And we're going to define this first, because I'm going to need this to type entirely. Okay. And if my video and audio goes in now, please let me know. I'll try some quick repairs on the spot. But yeah, so first question is, what is Python? Right? That is always our first question. So Python is a high level programming. I can't spell, by the way, so you might see me spell things really wrong. Language. Ooh, do you know what I'm gonna do? Give me 1 second. I'm gonna pull up my slides on my phone, just to make sure I don't miss anything that I normally do cover. So give me like 1 solid second. Today's just a bad day. Python is a snake, obviously. Yes, you're right. I'm sorry. Oh, let's see. I was trying to get this working. I think I should be able to. Do you guys hear the background music? I just want to make sure there is something there for you guys. Okay, cool. Funny thing was, because I was messing with it so much, it had it. No background music. Okay, let's see. Now I've repaired the internet. Hopefully it works. Okay. I mean, worst case, no background music, not the end of the world. You're welcome to a boring lecture today. I will try to get all this resolved for next time. Have absolutely no clue what is going on. Oh, okay. Cool. Glad to hear that. Okay, cool, wonderful. Okay, cool. So there is that background music. So we're gonna continue what we're doing. So Python is a high-level programming language. What that essentially means is that there's a lot of beginning language to start with. It is generally used in a lot of different things, such as web development. With web development, you have your frameworks, such as my brain just totally emptied on me. But you have web development, you have your frameworks such as Flask. And what is the other one that's really basically Flask, but not Flask? I don't know if you're actually getting 8-bit music or if that is just my thing's lagging, but I'm glad you like it 404. You have Flask, you have Django. That's what I was thinking. Django. So those are two like web development framework. You have your scientific computing. Scientific computing. All right. So you can use frameworks such as what are those called? Like Matplotlib. You have my brain is so blanking on me. Django, yeah. I got that one. Thank you. So Matplotlib. What is the everyone should know this one. What is it? It's the table one. Sure, we can do tensor. Okay, actually, I'm gonna save TensorFlow for our next category, which is AI. Yeah, TensorFlow. Okay. Yes. Okay. Cool. Everyone is so great at their Python. You're basically data. So whoa. Okay. Everyone, you can chillax a tad bit. This is just an example. So like with TensorFlow, right? So data analysis, we have pandas, NumPy. We do have network X for AI. sklearn, yeah, scikit-learn. Okay, cool. Examples, right? So essentially, Python is such a high-level program you can do everything, a lot of things in, right? Some history fact, it was actually released in 1991 by Van Rossum. Can't say their name, perfectly fine. Okay, cool. Okay, cool, wonderful. And it's generally what we use it for because it's simple to use. It's easy to use programming languages by assign a lot of data processing or any type of visualization within Python. Another pretty popular language that is a bit less versatile, that is really just for the statistical use, is R. But today we're going to be exploring Python. But yeah, so the type of language, right? So we have a few different types of language in computer science. We have something called interpreter languages, which essentially means that code is executed line by line rather than compiled into machine code at once. And those are generally easier to write and easier to test because you can just provide it a line and it'll read and understand and perform action comparatively to writing all the lines and generating it. Voice break, yeah, sure. Some fun fact from 404. Voice break, unfortunately, I can't fix it right now. Trust me, my ISP will be getting a complaint. I'm going to ask for the manager. I'm just kidding. But they will be getting a complaint call because I had better internet before this. Lag. Hello? Can you hear me? Okay. Oh, hello. I don't know how long this is gonna last. My ISP will 100% be getting a phone call from me at this point. But yeah, so there's also many third me. I think that's all I can really ask for. I will be speaking to the manager. This is an internet upgrade. Okay. I'm gonna cut down on the internet cost. Can you hear me better now? Hello. Any more lag? We're gonna cut down our bandwidth. Who's your ISP? Because we might need to do a class action. I don't know, class action phone call to our ISPs. Okay, cool. For the sake of clarity of the stream, all good. Turn off the music maybe. So the good thing is music isn't coming from my side, so I don't think the music is much the problem, but the video stream is coming from my side. Oh, if I remove that window, which is like the thing you see right there that like is apparently like telling me when I'm talking, you lose the audio completely. Data. What is data? Data is only a way for us to store values or store information. And in Python, there's multiple data types for you to do that. So what is a data type? A data type is a classification of data. So it determines how data is stored in memory. So how much actual storage it is using, how much it is needs to be computed with, what action it can be performed. Yeah, okay. This is a problem. Too laggy. Here. Give me 1 second. When problems arise, you come up with solutions. So we're gonna come up with a crazy solution. This is probably the wildest thing I've done in a while. I've never had this issue, so I'm kind of really intrigued on what is going on. Wait. Okay, everyone, just give me like 1 second. This is the most insane stream I've ran in a while. Hello. Hello? Hear me? Okay, so now we're streaming across 3 devices. So the code is being programmed on my computer. Your guys are picking up the mic from my actual iPad. This is actually insane. But because of that, you might hear some clicking. So I hope you're ready for some ASMR stream. I am so sorry for that. But yeah, okay, cool. So what we were talking about before, which was, okay, what's funny is I can hear that. It's so weird. This is the weirdest thing I've done in such a long time. Okay, cool. So yeah, let's continue so we can make sure we get some learning done today. So some of it was data types, right? So some of how data is stored in memory, so it helps determine things like its size, that it needs to be stored. It is used to determine the format, the range of values, the values, right? And then it also is, we're going to tab back out. It also helps you essentially be able to read someone else's code and understand what's going on, because you kind of have to find everything that is happening. But yeah, so the next thing is that there is a lot of different built-in data types, but you can also create your own custom data type. We're going to take a look at some of the built-in ones, and then in a future stream, we might look at how to build your own data type. A data type is essentially just a definition how data is stored. So you can always define your own definition how it's stored in memory, even using, sometimes we call it more complex data type, which is you build your own custom data type using a lot of already existing data types. But yeah, so defining the proper data type is generally really important for writing correct and efficient code, and also avoiding errors from incompatible data types, right? For example, if I try to add words together, if I was telling you, hey, I want you to add the word cat with the word dogs, you wouldn't know what to do necessarily. The computer has a solution for it, because remember, to a computer, all data essentially boils down to numbers. So the computer actually will have a solution for that. But in our example, in the human world, I was to ask you, hey, I want you to add cat to dog. You would either come up with something pretty clever to do so, or you just can't do that, because you can't add two different types of data together. Well, actually, that's not even a good example. So if I was using operation, a type of operation that's specific for numbers with words, right? Okay, so we're going to go over our first type of data. So our first data type, I'm going to talk and type. I'm going to either enter a few times, scroll down a tad bit. So our first type of data is going to be our numbers. So numbers are essentially your everyday thing you work in math class, right? So we have a few types of number. Our first type of number is integers, and as you can guess, integers are just like in your math class where I can't spell. Good thing I'm not talking about English. Essentially are whole numbers. So this is your standard definition of integers. If you take any simple math class like algebra, they generally talk about the different classes of numbers, right? So the class of integers are whole numbers. So they can be either positive or negative. They can have no fractional components. Well, I'm going to put parts, so they have no fractional parts, so they have to be one or the other. And some of the examples, right? If you cannot tell me an integer, I would be concerned. I'd be like 0, 5, -1, 535. They're all whole number, or like 2, 3, 3, 4, right? And our next class of integers numbers that we utilize a lot in Python is called floats. Floats are also known as floating point numbers. I don't know why I'm deciding to type this. So usually this goes a lot smoother when I have slides, so that I don't have to type everything out. But yeah, so what floating point numbers are essentially, they're just numbers. Instead of being whole, they're numbers with fractional parts, right? So you're allowed to add that fractional part, which then expands the amount of the different types of number we're allowed to have. So for example, we can have 3.14159265358 9. Okay, I'm not gonna try. So if they haven't recognized, that was the numbers of pi. But yeah, so pi is the example of a floating point number. If you take negative whatever pi is, which is 3.14, it is also a floating point number. What's the name of this background music? The name of this background music, I don't know if you can find anywhere else, but it is called Future House, running at beats per minute of 112. I have it in various speeds, but this is beats per minute of 112. Thank you for asking a fun question. But yeah. Okay, let's continue. So we're going to keep talking. So then the other type of number we have is called complex numbers. So what are complex numbers? Complex numbers are essentially numbers with both real and imaginary part, and they can exist in Python. And they're generally pretty rare for us to work with. So what that means is real parts are essentially numbers that have been defined with an imaginary part, which is like, you can think of it, it's almost like a variable, and it is pretty a more complex, hence the name complex number, of a mathematical concept, right? If you have worked with algebra, you've seen it. So an example of this would be like -1i, right? So that's a complex number, or 2 + 5i. So if you haven't time, we're not going to talk about the imaginary number part. It does exist in Python. We're actually going to not be utilizing that pretty often. We're not utilizing that really often. So we're going to move on. So those are your numbers that you're allowed to work with in Python. The next thing we're going to look at is called strings, right? Strings are, if you think about it, are essentially just a sequence of characters is what we're going to find them as. So they're a sequence, sequence of chars. And characters are just what you commonly work with in the alphabet. So your A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, K, and then whatever, right? And they're generally defined by using quotes. So you could be used double quotes like that or single quotes. And anything you type between them are a string. So this is a string. And this is also a string. And all that essentially is it allows you to utilize our common and everyday language, like words and sentences in Python, right? So maybe you want to print something else, you would have to store whatever sentence you're trying to print into a string, and we're going to talk about printing really soon. So those are your strings, right? So they're essentially just your words and characters and how we communicate on a day-to-day basis on this. The next thing, another data type we have is what we call Booleans. And what Booleans are essentially are just a representation of two values, right? They're like almost the smallest form of data, because once you actually boil it down on a computer, how data is stored is essentially stored in electronic pulses of 0 or 1s. And what that is, it's actually a type of Boolean. But in our scenario, Boolean essentially is, you can think of it as a flag or something that only has two type of representation, which is true or false. So your true or false question are Boolean type questions. They can be generally used to express logical values. They can be used to alter control flow. We're going to talk about that, what control flow is later down the stream, right? So they can generally also be combined and used with logical operators, not local, it's logical operators. Yes, logical operators. And then another thing is, right, we talked about how Booleans are just representation of two essential values. And what that essentially means is that it can be represented as the actual values true, false. You can also represent it in other type of data types, right? We talked about two already existing data types, which is strings and numbers, right? So in numbers, essentially zeros are false, is our representation of false. If we were to like look at it in the lens of numbers, and thank you. I don't know if this is a real day. If it is, I'm having the worst teacher's day ever. But that's okay. We come up with a solution, we move on. This is why we're engineers, or at least we're computer scientists for most people here. If you're not, that's perfectly fine too. We just solve problems. But yeah, so any other number, so any actual number like 1 would be considered true, right? So essentially the false case is only 0 and anything else would be considered true. Our next thing, as we already talked about, which is strings, and it follows the same concept. Essentially for most basic data types outside of Boolean, if you wanted to represent it in a Boolean matter or Boolean way, any value that is empty we'll consider nothing is your false value. Anything that is an actual value is considered true. For example, this just quotes, right? So it's an empty string is considered false. But a string with anything in it, even a space like that, is considered true. Remember, what space is still data. It's still a representation of data. So we just now understand about Booleans, right? So we talked about numbers, we talked about strings, we talked about Booleans. We're going to move on and talk about what we call lists, right? List is a more, it's not a complex, but it is a bit more complex of a data structure than your average basic building block, right? So the other three we talked about, strings, numbers, and Booleans, are really the key basic building blocks. List is essentially just a collection of elements. What that means is instead of storing only one element, for example, one string, one integer, one float number, or one Boolean value, you're allowed to store multiple. I'm gonna mute that real quick. Okay, cool. So you're allowed to store multiple, which means it's a collection of elements. and it's a commonly used data structure. So when we get to more complex data storing method, we sometimes call it a data structure. You can use it to store any type of object. And what that essentially just means any type of data object, right? So it could be strings, booleans, etc. You can technically store a list within a list. Also, thank you. I saw that one in chat. I'll call that out real quick. But yeah, so lists, one cool thing about them is lists are ordered, which means however you store them in, it matters because they are essentially assigned to order as you're storing them in. We're going to take a look at that later. And they're generally declared by using brackets. So for example, this is how you would start a list. And what we would say is, for example, a list of numbers with just integer would be like this. So this is a list of integers. List of ints. So we can also create a list of float, which we would just transfer all the numbers into floats. So this would be a list of floats. And what's key here is also for lists, you would separate elements, items in the list with commas. And when we say the order matters, essentially this means that this number is in position, this number is in position 0. So if you were to reference it in this list, you would have to call 0. This number is in position 1, 2, 3, 4. So orders matters. And because we're in computer science, for some odd reason, we decided to start our list or our collection of objects at the number 0 and not 1. You want to make sure if you're referencing the first items of a list, you're referencing it at location 0. And this concept of location is also called index. I do not know why we like to make up words and meanings to add a level of complexity, but this is called index, and items in a list can be accessed through the index. And how that kind of looks like, right? Which is you would say I want from this list object at index 2, which if you think, right, object index 0 is actually 1.0, object index 1 is 2.0, so object index 2 is 3.0. So the correct answer for 3.0. But that is a crash course on list. We're going to just explore, actually, we're going to stop here and actually do some coding. Normally when I have a bit more time, we explore a few other concepts, which I do encourage you to look at, and we might explore them in part 2, just to make them up. But we also explore tuples. Tuples are essentially lists, but there are unordered pair of lists. Unordered collection of objects. Oh, oops, I meant sets, sorry. We generally do this. So tuples are essentially sorry, I was looking at slides. But yeah, so we only talk about tuples, sets, and dictionaries. What tuples are order immutable sequence of elements. Essentially, they're the same thing as lists, but once they're created, they can't be changed. Then we have sets, which is our unordered collection of unique elements, which means there cannot be more of the same element in a list, and it's unordered. So when you're referencing a set, you essentially would just be talking about everything that's within the set, and you wouldn't be looking at specific objects. You have the dictionary, which is essentially an unordered collection of key value pairs. Again, the key here is unordered, and if you are coming from any other programming language, you might be familiar with them as associative arrays, maps, or hash tables. Hey, sorry, I was kind of fluttered there, but that's okay. So we talked about types, and now we're going to talk about a specific method. What method are essentially already existing code that's been essentially compartmentalized for you to utilize. So the method type allows us to tell what data type each object is, right? And it's really useful when, let's say, when you're working with a bit more complex structure, and when you get a data where like you're getting, maybe you make a call out to API, since we're talking about Web3, right? So maybe you make a call out to API and you receive data and you're not sure what type of data it is or why it looks like how it is. You can always call type on it. And for example, we're going to go into our console. I want to make sure this is this should be the Python console, which is basically it's an interactable interpreter instance for you to be able to interact with directly. And every time you give it a line of code, it will interpret it there and actually output what that line of code is, right? So what we're going to do is, if I do type of what we talked about earlier, which is 1, you can see it tells you it is the class integers. And this also works for complex types, right? So if you ever get some data and you don't know what type of data it is, you can always throw it into the type function, and it will try to tell you what class the data comes from, or what type of the data it is. So you can see that if you added the 0.0, it turned into a float. And actually, I just realized that I'm probably blocking the screen a tad bit, which is why I'm going to actually switch over to this layout. There you go. Okay, cool. So you can see that the type here is float. So if I, let's say, do type again, but this time I'm going to add quotes, right? We talked about how you declare strings with quotes. I'm going to put 1 in it. You would, unable to see the console. Can you? Yes, I just did that. Hopefully you can see it now. Thank you for that suggestion. But yeah, so if I do type of a quoted number or integer, you can see that this now says the string, because anything inside of quotes are a string type, right? And the reason for that is sometimes when we talk about strings, we might want to use numbers within our strings, right? And that is one way to do it. So if you're trying to utilize, let's say, a number as a string, you would just put it around quotes. If you're trying to use a number as an actual number type, you would just utilize it without quotes. You guys not hear me? Yeah, as in you can still hear me, or yeah, as you can no longer hear me. Oh, have I gotten a little quiet? So here, again, I'm talking to my my iPad at this point. So we're streaming across multiple devices. I just held it closer, so hopefully this is loud enough. But yeah, yes, okay, cool. That's good to hear. So those are the idea of data types, right? So we talked about type of data, and now we want to talk about the values that this type of data can possibly store. And what that means is, so values are essentially basic building blocks of data. You can assign them to variables, which is the idea of, just like in math, you have named objects that you are temporarily assigning value to, or we might be long-term, right? So variables are just a storing place for data. So for example, if I call a variable x, which are pretty common, we're pretty familiar with because of mathematical concepts and how we teach those, right? We can store data in x, right? So sometimes you might set x to 1 or x to 5 or x to 25. And the 25 is your value portion, x is your variable portion, and that carries over into computer science. So again, values are the basic building blocks of data and can be assigned to variables or passed as arguments to function, which means we can use values in multiple forms. And everything we kind of talked about in terms of data types, when we actually create one, there are values, right? Data type is the concept. Each value is defined as a certain type of data and has a data type. But all the things we're talking about were values, right? For example, 1 is a value. So you can see I just stored the variable x to the value 1. 2 is a value. 2.0, 3 is a value, right? 2.3 is a float data type value. 2 is an integer data type value. You have true, right? True is the data type value. This is a Boolean value, and so on and so forth. And we can also give this example with our lists, right? So for example, I can do x is equal to a list. It's empty list. And to hammer this in even more, for example, when I actually do this in the console, I can temporarily set, let's say, x equal to 1. So if I tell it, hey, console, what is x? It will tell me x is 1. If I do type of x, which we learned a second ago, it tells me what type of this variable is, right? It's saying the type of the data stored in variable x is 1, right? And the cool thing is with variables, you can always change the values in it, right? So for example, when you're doing a mathematical problem, and in a problem, x might be 5. Another problem, x might be 2, and so on and so forth. And that it carries over in computer science, where let's say I can say x is actually equal to the string hello world. So I'm going ahead and changing what x is. So if I ask the computer, tell me what x is, it's telling me it's hello world. And now if I do type of x, you can see that it went from integer to a string. So you can modify the variables that the values stored in variables that you're working with. And again, variable is essentially just a given name to where the data is going to be stored. Well, and if you actually are going to get into computer science more in depth, essentially it's a given name to a memory location of your computer where the data is stored. If you're not getting computer science, it's really just a name to where a name for storage where you can store values in. But yeah, so a way to refer to value by a name is essentially what a variable all is. And each variable has different types. And actually, because we're in Python, if you're coming from another language, you might notice that when I declared the variable, I actually didn't have to tell it what type it is. And actually, in most programming languages, you generally have to also tell it what type it is. But Python, you don't need to declare the type of the variable. And this is because Python does something called inferred typing, which essentially it looks at the value that it has been assigned to that variable and then infers what type of variables, what type of variable it is, what type of value the variable is used to store. So this allows essentially to do dynamic assigning, which is because Python is a dynamically typed language. It allows essentially the assigning of different types of value to a single variable, which is why you saw how I could change X from something that only stored numbers to something that stored a string. There are definitely benefits of utilizing things like dynamic typing, right? It allows you more flexibility, allows you easier to write code in, right? So I can write a temporary variable and store multiple things in it. There's also negatives to dynamic typing, right? So essentially, you never actually know what a variable is or what has been stored in a variable, and this is why that type function or that type method comes really handy, because if you're looking at a really long line of code, you have no clue if in some other point of the code someone else stored something else in it, or maybe when you reach out, because this is Web3, we reach out to, let's say, API and we got a response back and we stored it in it. Maybe one day the API start returning different data and wouldn't be able to tell if we can't, let's ask what type it is. But yeah, so let's get hands-on and create a few variables and put this all together. And we'll probably call this the end of this stream. I'm going to go ahead and then after this stream is phone in my ISP and go, what the heck is going on? But before we do all that, I'm actually going to see, so this is all your comments, right? So none of this will actually run. You can always take notes in your comments. So I'm actually going to delete up there, and then I'm going to we can start writing code in here, right? So we're going to generate a few variables for us to play with and see how this concept all works together, right? So let's say I want to start by making a simple, let's say, question, right? So maybe I want to interact with the user by asking them a really simple series of questions. And maybe there's some questions I want to ask, like, what's your favorite movie, right? So I can do fave_movie. And is the variable's name. It's where this where data is going to be stored in this location, right? It's, again, if you're in computer science, essentially it's I just named a part of memory, favorite movie, and then whenever I reference for a movie, the computer goes to that part of memory, grabs the data. For people not, just think of it, favorite movie, I just created a storage space called favorite movies, and I can store data in favorite movies. Yeah, so let's say favorite movie is I'm going to want to store a string in it, so I'm going to first set it to empty string. That is just telling it this is going to be storing a string object because it's going to use dynamic typing. I actually don't even have to do this. I can declare without it, but for our sake and our ability to understand and make sure that this is where we're going to be storing a string type variable, I'm going to start declaring with these empty things, right? So for example, maybe I say favorite movie is empty string, and really quick concept jump, because I need to make sure I cover this, which is in programming languages, generally you can declare variables in two types of ways. One is called snake case, which is essentially if you're typing a sentence like fave movie, you would turn every space into an underscore. So all space becomes underscore, and then you would lowercase all letters. So it kind of looks like a snake, right? Lowercase. So for example, fave movie, if I was named as a variable name, would turn into fave_movie, right? It kind of looks like a snake because if we add to this, like fave movie of all time, right? You can see that like it just builds into a link. The other type of case we have is called camel case. And there's no actual right or wrong way of doing it, but each programming language generally has something called standards, right? And in the standard in Python, we use snake case, but you can also use camel case. Camel case, we're going to use the same example, which is if you are given, let's say, a sentence fave movie, how camel case treats it is instead of turning all space into underscore, you turn all spaces into uppercase of the next word. So for example, the same sentence, fave movie of all times, would become, you always start lowercase though, because if you start in uppercase, we generally use that reserve declaring what we call constant, which is another idea we'll go into later. But essentially, just remember, for camel case, the first letter still starts at lowercase, so we should do fave. But instead of underscore or space movie, we would do fave movie, oops, and then it'll be of, and then it'll be all time. So that is two ways of declaring variables properly, using either camel case or snake case. And like I was saying, in Python, our general cadence or our general standard is to use snake case, right? So that's why I'm using snake case. So maybe I'm going to do age, right? Age, I'm going to set to 0. So Python, when it does dynamic typing, it knows that age is the type of integer. Favorite movie is in quotes because it's string. So yeah, let's collect those two. Let's get name too, right? So we're going to do name, and name will still be a string. We're going to do user underscore name, right? So I'm saying it's user's name. Okay, and then now we're going to get to a new concept, which is taking input from user, right? It is, we have in Python, we have a function or method called input. And what input allows you to do is request input from whoever the user is through the console to be utilized within your code. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to first, so I'm going to ask for age first, right? So we're going to talk about this later, which is a type of assignment. So to assign or set a variable equal to a value, we use the equal sign. So what this is saying, essentially, it's going to take an input from the user. So whatever the user provides it will then set it or assign it into the variable age, right? So the age has been created to store data, and we are getting data from the user and then storing into age. Is all this is essentially saying, which is get data from user and store into var age. So I can't tell. Can you still hear me? That was weird because you saw my replit just like disappear and came back, but that's perfectly fine. And then so for us, we're gonna need to provide it, right? So technically what I can do is, we're gonna get into our next concept real quick, is called print. Print allows us essentially to interact and look at data. So for example, I want to see what's an age. What I can say is print. Print essentially takes whatever it's given and outputs into the console, right? So input takes things from the console and brings into your program. Print takes whatever is provided it and outputs into the console. So what this whole process looks like, if I run it, it's really happy we ran our first time. But you can see what's going to happen is you're going to see anything, right? Because input actually takes a string as prompt. But since I didn't provide anything, it will just print nothing. Which if I do 56, you can see I got 56 back. So what essentially happened there is input asked for an age. I provided input 56 by typing into the console. It accepted it, set that equal to age, and then when we told print to take whatever is an age and put it out to the console, it then printed 56. But what actually input allows you to do is it takes it takes an argument, which in this case we're gonna call it hello, what is your age? So it takes argument that's a string, and what it does is it'll print the string out when it's asking for the input, so it becomes more user friendly, right? So if I run now, it looks like it's almost like a question. It's prompting me for answer. So now I can say I am 78 years old, and then it's printing the age 78, right? But what we might want to actually do is print more than that, right? So what we can do actually is, for print, you can print more than one thing at once. You can pass it more than one type of argument, and it can print them all at once. So in our case, and maybe I want to say, I'm going to create a string, and you will separate each argument by a comma. So maybe I would say, oh, so your age is, right? And then if I run this, we'll kind of get this back and forth thing going already. So maybe my age is 87, and then it printed out, so your age is 87. And then we can continue this, right? Because we want to interact with the rest of the variables we created. So maybe I can do user name, which is the user's name, is that I'm going to set it to input again. And then like what we just did already, we're going to do, okay, what is your name? You can do it like that, or however you want to do it, right? So I like to use colon as my differentiator factor. Also, hello, welcome in chat. We're actually almost wrapping up our introduction to Python. There has been some technical challenges, so I will make sure to stick around for some questions right after this. But we went over variables and data types, and now we're utilizing variables, data, and values, and creating a really simple back and forth program. We also did talk a bit about print and input, right? So what is your name? So now after that is done, you see it's yelling at me. The reason it's yelling at me is because I didn't close out this comma or this string, right? So I need to close out the string so it knows that it's not going to continue looking for the string code later down the line. So we're going to now do print. We're going to now print out like our response to their input, which like in this case might be, oh, it's so nice to meet you. And then we can put their name here, right? And then, so I can do user name, and then I can do another comma if I want to like do, actually I'm going to leave it like this. Actually, no, I'm going to put it, but we're going to look at why this is a problem later, right? So we're going to do this, and if I now run this now, you can see it asks for our age. I'm going to say I'm 87 years old. My name is Kev, and it says, oh, it's nice to meet you, Kev. Right? But you see how there's extra space here. And the reason that is because every time you add a comma within a print statement, it's telling it, hey, I want to generate a space. And how we get around that is we can do something is we have a concept and we call it f-strings. F-string essentially is just a formatted string, and what that allows you to do is to print that almost all as one string. So I'm actually going to just copy this top thing down, right? I'm going to put it in the F string. So we're going to first get rid of all these extra quotes because we don't actually need them. And then what we're going to do is remove all the commas as well, right? So almost like we typed out the sentence. And this is a perfectly fine sentence, right? It's yelling at me because there's no placeholder, because what you would do is you want to insert variables in the sentence. And for us to actually do that, what we would do is you use something called curly braces around the variable. So this allows you to actually input variables directly into your string and allows printing to be a lot easier, right? So I formatted the string to go, oh, it's so nice to meet you, and then it will insert the variable here. Instead of just printing this out, it goes to the value, or goes to where username is, grabs the value there and puts it in, and then prints out as a whole thing. So I'm going to actually comment this out. So if you see, if I run this, it goes, my age is 87. What is my name? My name is Kev. Oh, it's nice to meet you, Kev. And you can see now, because I'm no longer using the commas, it doesn't automatically add a space in. But yeah, okay, let's do our favorite movie real quick, right? We kind of have the flow of everything. So we can do fave movie is equal to input, and we can just do, what is your fave movie? And then we'll just do this, right? And then we will do print. We're gonna use f string because we talked about that. We're still using that. We're gonna use our this. And then we're gonna do fave movie. Oh, fave movie sounds like an awesome movie. And then we're gonna run this. Right, so now we created a really simple program. We asked someone for their age, we got their name, and then what is your favorite movie? My favorite movie is, I can't spell it actually. So I'm gonna put, it's either Ratatouille or Matilda. I know they're pretty old movies. Some of you guys probably don't even know what they are. But yeah, so it'll be like favorite movies, and then you just input it here. So I'm just gonna put ABC, right? That's part of the movie. And you can see we got this whole output where we asked someone for their age, we got their age, we took that in, get some names, and yeah, I think we're gonna stop here for our really basic beginning idea. Is there any question from chat that I can address for today? We're gonna pick this up in part 2, which is actually happening tomorrow morning, Eastern Standard Time. Anywhere, do the math for that. Which we're going to cover some more advanced Python. This was a really simple, basic taste of what Python kind of looks like and how powerful it is, right? It took us less than an hour to really get started in Python and already be able to interact and almost create a simple program which this is a really simple program, but it is a program nonetheless, right? So everyone here has created a pretty simple program to interact with, to collect information from the user and interact with them and then display that information back to the user, right? Okay, that's a wonderful question. It's amazing. We're actually going to look at that, right? So this is the exact question, and this is the problem with dynamically typed dynamically typed programs, right? Is that we don't know what it is. But this is a great call. We're actually going to cover that next time. I have this plan, which is called typecasting. So you're right. So the actual type of age will actually be string, because what input does, it takes everything as a string. As you can see, right? If you hover over function, it tells you, it says this function returns. You see the arrow? It's saying what it actually returns. It always returns as a string. So input all returns as string, which means you would not be able to use age in a mathematical operation, which we'll actually talk about next time. Next time we're going to talk about the types of data, the operators that they're allowed to work with, as well as how to convert types to your type of your data to the type you might want to operate with. How much Python is necessary for Django? In all honesty, it really depends on your comfortability level and other topics, right? And also if you have ever coded prior before, what your web experience looks like. You cannot know Python and start Django if it's not your first programming language and you also have a decent understanding of how Web3 works. How you use types? Yeah, right. So for types, I'm gonna pull this question up real quick. So you somehow use types, right? For example, what I actually can do is we're actually, instead of just printing the string, I'm actually gonna also print out type, right? So you can print anything, right? So I can tell it to call the method type, right? And I can call it on, let's say, I'm going to call it on age. What this does is it'll figure out what type is of age, and then it'll print it out to the console. So if I run this now, and I'll do the same thing, which is like 87, my name is Kev, my favorite move is ABC. You can see it printed out class string, which means the type of age is string. But yeah, we're going to dive way more in depth tomorrow after today, which is also where I'm going to figure out what the heck is going on with my ISP and hopefully fix all this internet problem. And it will go way smoother. But yeah, any other questions I can address? Questions, chat? Any questions? No questions, chat? Okay. I do want to say, please do stick around for our Day in Global Hack Week, which where you'll learn all the amazing things that's happening for today's Global Hack Week, which is happening at 12 o'clock. Oh, you mean predefining types? You don't predefine types. So we talked about this earlier, which is Python is a dynamically typed language. What that means is when the program is actually running, what it does is it looks at what value is stored in that variable, and then it would then define what type that variable is based off the value that's stored in it, right? If you come from another programming language like Java or C, you would generally have to tell it what type of variable it is, and then you can never change the type of that variable. But in Python, that's not an issue because it's a dynamically typed language. Before using it, just like static, you can use type as a way to check, and the reason that is because we can't actually control the type of a variable, right? I can create the variable x, I can store a string in it, I can store an integer in it, I can store a Boolean value in it, I can store a list in it, and it can always change. That is the advantage, and there is advantage and disadvantage of dynamically typed languages. Great, I'm glad to hear that. I hope tomorrow runs a lot more smoothly, but thank you for showing up, and hopefully that makes sense. But yeah, so there is advantage and disadvantage of dynamically typed languages. Got it, yes. Python is a dynamic language. Okay, with that all being said, I will conclude here for today. We'll work on resolving our problem. I'm calling the ISP right as the string ends, and we'll hopefully get this all resolved. And tomorrow we'll have a way smoother string with our old antics. And I hope you guys do stick around or come back and join us at 12 p.m. for our Day in Global Hack Week, where we go over all the fun and amazing things that's happening today. But with that being said, thank you all for coming out and showing up. I hope you get some rest and enjoy the rest of your hack day. Global Hack Week. Oops, sorry. But it's today in Global Hack Week, yes. Peace out, everyone.